All right, back with another tier rankings list as I do every Monday. This is week 9. We are halfway home. Not quite. There's still a Monday night game, so technically we're not quite halfway through the season, but man, does it go by fast. Let's just get into it. The 4 teams you see already on the list, those are the teams that did not play this week. So either, 2 of them play on Monday Night Football, 2 of them had a bye. But let's get into the other teams. If you want to hear why I put the 4 teams that are there where they're at, you can just check out last week's show. But yeah, let's start off with the Titans, who they picked up a win. This was an ugly game. I mean, these two teams are not coming away from that game feeling very good about themselves. I think, well, hey, the Titans, you got a victory. You got to feel good about that, I would say. But, they gave up a last-second touchdown to allow the Patriots to then tie the game. Patriots decided not to go for 2, all that stuff. But I think they're a competent team with Mason Rudolph here. I don't know if I can bump them up too scrappy. I mean, it did take overtime to beat the Patriots, so I think I'm going to still keep them in bad. There might be a decent amount of teams in the bad tier this week. We'll see, though. They're approaching scrappy. Another solid win or 2, they could get into the scrappy tier, but for now, I'm going to keep them in bad. The Dolphins are tough because, I mean, they're a talented team, right? I can't quite put them in feels like playoffs because even with Tua, they still have lost both games he's been out there. But, that was really impressive. I mean, Tua was really good, I thought, in that game. They're a different team with him. They need to go on a run and start racking up wins. They play the Rams next week. I think they have a chance in that game. And if they can win it, you'll feel pretty good about them. But as of right now, it's unfortunate just with the Tua injury and how they really did not stay afloat when he was out. But yeah, they're doing some nice things here, even though they keep losing. The Jets, who I almost considered putting them into bad tier last week. I didn't do that. I kept them in scrappy, and then they beat the Texans, who, the Texans have their issues, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But the Jets looked a lot better. This is a team with talent. I still feel like their secondary is so injured. But if they can get it together, which on paper, this should be a good roster, I still think this can be a solid team, and who knows, maybe they can go on a run. I'll bump them up a tier. I can't quit the Jets just yet. I still think Aaron Rodgers has played good this year. I don't think he's been the issue, but of course, it doesn't get the headlines to say, I think Rodgers has played well, but the situation around him hasn't been great. What gets the headlines is saying Rodgers stinks, but I don't think it's true. I think they're all right now, but in such a hole, they need to start racking up to get more wins. Speaking of in a hole and needing to rack up wins, that's the situation Cincinnati had found themselves in. They did lose to the Eagles 2 weeks ago, but a big win here, kind of dominating the the Raiders. Now they play the Ravens on Thursday Night Football. That should be a fun game. I still feel like, okay, this team, when their defense can do okay, looks awesome because Joe Burrow is playing at such a high level right now. I talked about this on the podcast, but if the Bengals were if they were 6-2, or if they had a record like that and Burrow was still playing at this level, he'd be in the MVP discussion. He's playing so well. And some of those throws, some of those plays he was making in that Raiders game was incredible. I still, I had put them in feels like playoffs for a while. After the loss to the Eagles, I dropped them down a tier. Still want to keep them in this tier. I need to see the defense hold its own against a solid team. If they can beat Baltimore, they are 100% jumping up at least a tier, probably. I think that's what's going to happen. I can't say 100% probably. That doesn't make sense. But, I think that's what I'm going to do, is bump them up a tier. I had to throw into probably because there was that time a few weeks ago when it said the Vikings, I would bump them up a tier if they won, and then they won, and I was like, well, I'm not sure if I want to. So now I have to throw in those probablys at the end. But yeah. I mean, good stuff here by the Bengals. The Browns, I put them into solid tier. That was probably a bit of an overreaction. They are better with Winston, but I still think scrappy feels fair. They still have some defensive pieces. And, listen, the Chargers, they do that to quarterbacks, right? Winston didn't look good out there. This Chargers defense is really good. It's one of the most underrated units in the league, I would say. So, this is what Jameis is going to do. He's going to give you a 3-touchdown performance and then a 3-interception performance. It is what it is. It's why he hasn't been a starter because of some of these issues. But hey, Myles Garrett had 3 sacks. There's still some positives with Cleveland, so I'm not going to put them in bad just yet. The Jaguars, who had a bizarre game, I think they had like 215 yards of offense in this game, but still put up 23, partially due to a weird fumble recovery touchdown. Great play by Trayvon Walker on that, though, but still a weird play. Hey, they nearly were able to steal that game. The Eagles looked like the better team throughout. I don't know. They're not a great team. I've kept them in scrappy for most of the year. I feel like that's fair. There still are pieces to like about this team, but they're just not a complete team. The Lions, I mean, this is obvious. They're going to keep in Super Bowl contenders, probably going to be there all season. Can't imagine unless Jared Goff gets injured or something like that. Feels like they're going to be, in this tier. Who knows? Maybe if they have a key injury. I mean, they've already withstood one key injury to Aiden Hutchinson, and so far still look good, although I think they should trade for a pass rusher. Pass rush hasn't looked quite as good as you would like, but still, everything else is so good. Like, this is a team that could absolutely win it all. The Vikings able to beat the Colts, and this was a game that their defense played great, from start to finish. Defense was awesome. Only gave up 6 points. The other, 7 of the points were given up by the offense. Darnold has to stop turning the ball over if they're going to be a real threat. He just does. Like, you can't survive some of these turnovers against good teams. Luckily, they weren't playing a great team on Sunday Night Football, but you got to clean that up. Because of that, I'm still going to, last week I had them in Dark Horse. I'm going to keep them in Dark Horse for now. The way I view Dark Horse is like a team that could win it all, but not one I'm projecting to win it all. That's kind of where I'm going to keep them for now, and we'll see if that changes. The Falcons, who, hey, you could sit here and say the Dallas Cowboys defense, whatever. This team has done a great job of beating up on bad defenses, which there's something to that, right? When you have an opportunity, being able to take advantage. The Falcons are interesting because I've kind of talked about how I feel like they're a bit of a one-read team. Like, they need that first read to hit because, Cousins just can't extend plays that long, right? So usually if the first read isn't open, there's only so much you can do. But that first read's always open, man. I mean, like, they get that guy open so consistently. Who cares? And this coaching staff, I gotta say, hey, there was a lot of controversy of, you're going with Raheem Morris over Bill Belichick. So far, I think it's worked out, and I really like some of their fourth down decision-making stuff, too, that they've done, going for a lot of fourth downs, and even, like, on 3rd and 14, they're like, okay, let's try and gain 8 yards here so we can go for it on 4th down. Like, that stuff is smart. So, yeah, I still think that I want to see it against a better defense. I want to see it against a better offense, too, because their defense, Falcons' defense played well in this game, has had some spotty moments, though. But, yeah, feels like playoffs, feels fair. They could climb up a tier if they can do it against the teams that I consider to be better. Baltimore, I kept them in Super Bowl contenders despite their disappointing loss last week. Kind of said that's a divisional game. Things can get weird. And I think that was the correct take because, they go, this week go into, play a team in Denver who is not a bad team. And Denver certainly looked like a team that can really play this season, but it didn't matter against Baltimore. Lamar Jackson, I talked about how Burrow would probably be in the MVP discussion if his team was a little better. I still think Lamar would be number one. He's playing maybe his best season, despite the fact that the guy already has 2 MVP awards to his name. So, that's super fun. The Bears, man, it's hard to know what to do with this Chicago team. I think I'm going to keep them in solid because I do like this defense. And, we have seen flashes from Caleb Williams. This was not a great Caleb Williams performance. It just wasn't. They need more out of him. And also, okay, how do these Hail Mary things keep happening? I get that, okay, it happens once, whatever. How have you done this twice now, where now you give up a 50-plus yard run in a Hail Mary type situation? That can't happen. So some rough coaching here. So I think that they're probably closer to the scrappy tier than the feels like playoffs tier. But I'm still going to, they've won enough games, and their defense has played well enough. I'm still willing to keep them in this tier, at least for now. Next up, the Dallas Cowboys, who, I thought this was not a good day at all by the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I should mention, I'm recording this. I have yet to see any information on the extent of Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb's injuries. So I'm going to just assume that they will play next week when I put them in my rankings for this week. Obviously, that might not necessarily be the case. I mean, this is some of the coaching stuff was brutal here. Like, you have Kyle brought up on the podcast, they had a play where they only had 10 men on defense. Then they tried to go for a 4th and 1, but they had 12 men in the huddle, so then they got a flag and couldn't do that. The fake punt was just sniffed out immediately, which is like the fake punt. The thing is, like, you can't do a fake punt when it's an obvious go for it situation, because then teams are going to be like, hey, let's make sure that they don't fake the punt here. Like the Falcons were all over it. You see the way they played that versus how they played different punts. They were clearly paying attention to that. And also, like, this team just isn't that good. Like, they're giving up so much through the air. And, like, again, like, Trayvon Diggs, love him or hate him, the guy has won an All-Pro. And whether you agreed with that decision or not, like, he's playing horrible this year. You have to assume part of that is this Mike Zimmer scheme putting so much stress on these corners, and they're just not being able to, make it work. So, yeah, I think they're going to probably clean house in the coaching staff stuff. Dak Prescott, his cap hit's $90 million next year. So, it's tough. They're not the worst team. I'm not going to put them in a bad tier, but they're scrappy. That feels fair. Houston is in a very unique situation. Obviously, their record is very good, but dropping a tough one to the Jets, receivers matter, and the good thing for Houston is they're going to get Nico Collins back. So you have that. Obviously, I mean, it's tough because kind of they went into the season and we're thinking, okay, you got a wide receiver 1 in Nico Collins. They traded for a wide receiver 1 in Stephon Diggs. And then you have Tank Dell, who, like, at his best can be a wide receiver 1, and it's really probably a really good wide receiver number 2. So it's like, okay, this is a loaded receiving core. Losing your 2 best receivers, I mean, like, look at how Tampa Bay looks compared to, when they had those 2 receivers, right? You're a different team. That being said, you get Nico Collins back. I still think they can survive. But, like, this offensive line's really struggled. Kenyon Green, I mean, that might be worth trading for a replacement today or tomorrow. I'm going to drop them a tier. I am. I'm going to put them in feels like playoffs. Certainly still a playoff team, but, like, I don't know. I just don't view them as, like, good. As it's harder for me to see a path for them winning it all. But again, once Nico Collins gets back, maybe that changes. Maybe I put them back up a tier. But for now, this feels fair. I still think C.J. Stroud's a good quarterback, though. I think he's doing some nice things. The Colts, man, what a disappointing game. The one thing I would say for the Colts is, like, Minnesota does this to people. Their defense does this to people. So, like, Flacco's having a good year. It sucked that when he finally gets named the starter, he has his worst game. He's not always going to be a player who plays great week in and week out at this point in his career. It is what it is. There's still some offensive pieces I like. The defense did play well and even got a touchdown in this one. I'm still going to keep them in scrappy. It's where I had them last week. I think that I'm willing to still keep them there. But yeah, definitely a disappointing, Colts Sunday Night Football performance. Why did that get flexed into Sunday Night Football? I don't understand. Anyway, Rams are next on this list. How about the Rams racking up wins? They're back at 500. Puka Nacua got thrown out of this game, which was kind of funny just because we kept talking about how, finally, Kupp and Nacua are back. And then Nacua gets, throws a punch. The Rams go down double digits late going into halftime. And it's like, well, here we go. Seattle's going to pull this off. And then they just didn't. I mean, the Rams, sure, okay, they got a couple lucky plays, couple bounces, I guess I would say. They made plays in the red zone. Maybe that's the better way to phrase it. But still, this game was kind of decided on those 2 red zone turnovers. Seattle, if they don't screw that up, they probably win this game pretty handedly. Although, in fairness, Seattle also, they're a good team, and they had a great drive to tie the game and send it to overtime. You could also say it came down to that 4th down, go-for-it call, but the Rams made the plays. They were able to make things work, and again, they were missing a really valuable player in Puka Nacua here. So the question I have is, can I bump them up to feels like playoffs right now? Because I'll be honest, I don't view them as strongly as the 3 teams I currently have in that tier. But I also feel like, I don't know, I think solid, I can keep them in for now. I think I want to see it once more, because the Rams have had a history of having a really good week and a really bad week. They've been a little bit inconsistent. So I feel like they're definitely on the high end of the solid tier, but, them and Cincinnati are kind of, I think, very on the high end of the solid tier, and even Miami, to be honest. But for now, I'm going to keep them here. Let's go to the Chargers, who definitely are above the solid tier. This is the team that consistently is winning and winning handedly, beating a Browns team who, say what you want about them, they just beat Baltimore the week prior. Winston throws 3 interceptions against them, and there was honestly could have been more. The only question is, could I put them in dark horse? I don't think just yet. I still want to see it against like a top tier team. I think, and we have seen them, lose to Pittsburgh, right? So because of that, I'm going to keep them in feels like playoffs, but they definitely feel like a playoff team. Absolutely. You know who doesn't feel like a playoff team is the Raiders, who, drop another one to the Bengals. They fired 3 coaches on their offensive side of the ball, including their coordinator, along with it was the offensive line coach and the quarterbacks coach. Kyle brought it up on the podcast, and I kind of agree. It's like, I don't really look at this team and say they're not getting enough out of the talent on the roster. It feels like they're kind of getting the talent that they can, getting what they can get. It isn't a very talented unit, but at the same time, sometimes you got to just mix things up. I do understand it, but yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough for Raiders fans right now. A couple nice pieces, but this is not a good team. They're in a rebuild. Wouldn't be shocked if they deal somebody today or tomorrow, but for now, bad tier is where I'm having them. The Commanders, again, I keep wanting to put them in a dark horse tier. You know what? Yeah, why not? I think, this game, I'm not sure if it's really what decided the dark horse tier. It just feels like, you know what, if you're handedly beating teams, like, I should probably put you in this tier. I might be a week late in this, to be honest, because, I don't know, like, Jaden Daniels in this offense is playing at such a high level. Dan Quinn, what a job he's done. I wasn't crazy about the hire when they decided to go add Dan Quinn, but he's done a great job for this team. The defense has been playing better week after week after week. Just the Giants this week, but still, it's nice to see. So, yeah, good stuff here by the Commanders. The Saints, not so good stuff. I had them in the bad tier last week, but they're definitely in the bad tier this week. They lose to the Panthers. As of recording this video, I found out that Dennis Allen was fired because they lost to the Panthers. So, I mean, it says something about the Panthers, but still, I mean, this defense is now playing horrible. They're banged up. I get it, but like, even with some of the injuries, they need to start playing better. Some of the healthy guys need to start playing better if this team is going to, I thought this team could still maybe turn it around. You get a win here, you're 3-6. Can you make something happen? Not looking likely here. Rough spot for the New Orleans Saints. Next up is the Giants, who, again, there are a couple things this team does well. I don't think they looked horrible against Washington. It's just they're playing a team that's better than them, right? So, they're still a bad football team. There's still too many issues on this roster. I don't even know how much we need to get into it. I think Giants fans understand it. There's a very funny stat line when Daniel Jones was 4 for 6 for 0 yards and 1 touchdown. Those stat lines always crack me up. But yeah, I mean, not a good game here for the Giants. Not a great game for Daniel Jones, who wasn't horrible either. But again, they're a team that needs to rebuild. The Eagles, what a weird situation Philadelphia is in that, like, it seems like half the team wants Nick Sirianni fired. Not half the team, half the fan base wants Nick Sirianni fired. In fact, that's probably a low estimate. I mean, this guy's getting, when he's, a lot of his 4th down decision making and going for 2 decisions didn't work out in this game, to the point where he was getting booed for going for 2 just to go up 14 points with 7 minutes left in the game. Like, that's an obvious decision, but the fans were just fed up with him. They're winning games and they're looking good in a lot of these games. This could have been they could have won this one handedly had they either kicked field goals or just converted on some of these 4th down decisions, or got the tush push to work a couple times. But still, this is I think a very talented team. They need AJ Brown healthy. They're a different team with him out there, and he got banged up again in this game. But yeah, they're a dark horse. This is a good team. They are. The Broncos are next up on the list, who drop a tough one to the Ravens. They get kind of crushed in this game. I put them in the solid tier last week. I'm sure Broncos fans would like to see me be a bit more optimistic about them, but I just can't put them in that tier just yet. Still really like this defense, even though they got crushed against Baltimore. I think that's more about Baltimore than about them. That being said, though, it was a disappointing loss for the Broncos. I think you would have liked to see them be able to handle things a little bit better. I still just don't love this offense. And Bo Nix, I thought, played pretty well in this game, actually. But still, in a game where you get solid quarterback play, only being able to put up 10 points against a team that's pretty good, not that good, I should say, at defending in Baltimore. They've given up a decent amount of points this season. It was an underwhelming game. Granted, again, another team that couldn't hit their fourth downs in this one by Denver, but still got to make those plays. So, yeah, that feels fair for me right now. We then have the Packers, who I had in the dark horse tier, and I think I'm going to keep them there. Again, this is a weird game. Like, somehow the Lions had no issues throwing the ball in this weather, and the Packers were just incompetent at it. Like, they had 6 drops. There was a couple passes just slipped out of Love's hands. A couple fumbled snaps that you have to assume the weather was playing a role in. I think it'd be an overreaction to drop them a tier because of this game. Now, again, you have another performance like this, you will get dropped for something like that. But I just think it was a weird game. Still some unforced errors, like the pick six can't happen. Things like that. Got to make field goals, right? Even in the conditions, something you got to do. But as a whole, I think it'd be an overreaction to, given the circumstances, given the weather and all that. I think that played more of a role. But still, we'll see how they bounce back from this one. The Panthers. How about the Panthers on a victory Monday? Don't get to say that too often. Still don't think they're a great team. And Bryce Young definitely looked much better in this game than we have seen him look in previous weeks. It is also fair to say, yes, it's a weird stat line because there was that, what should have been a 40-yard completion that instead gets dropped and intercepted. Not dropped and intercepted, caught and intercepted, basically, that hurts his stat line. He also had a couple of dropped picks in this game, so it maybe is kind of not quite as good as some people's perception of him, in my opinion, but he still played well. He's playing competent football, and if you can start, get some of those performances together for Bryce Young, at the very least, teams love to give a shot, take a shot on a guy who was a first overall pick somewhere else, so we could see how that can work. But yeah, this team's not very good, though. I still think barely beating the Saints, I'm not gonna bump you up a tier for that. But hey, at least you went from getting crushed by the Saints to barely beating them. Either something's going some way. I think it might be more about the Saints going down than the Panthers going up. But still, a win is a win. How about the Cardinals, who, I kept saying I can't figure this team out. The second I believe in this team, they have a horrible game. The second I doubt this team, they have a great game. I keep saying week after week that I'm wrong about the Cardinals, and I'm just not sure in what way yet. But man, this team looks good. I'm going to put them in feels like playoffs. I mean, they're looking really good out there. This offense is just working, even without Kyler having a great day. Their defense playing better. Now, one thing I didn't talk about in the Caleb Williams thing, but if you blitz the Bears, it's over. The Bears they don't know how to handle. Caleb Williams hasn't figured out the blitz yet in the NFL, so he's got to work on that. But maybe, hey, good scouting, but also a bit of an easy situation there for Arizona. But still, I mean, they're playing good football. They really are. So yeah, as of right now, feels like playoffs. The Bills are next, who, I put them in Super Bowl contenders. No reason to take them out. I don't think, yes, that game was competitive against the Miami Dolphins, but also, they had a Keon Coleman drop at the 1-yard line that ends up getting batted up and intercepted. That doesn't happen. The game is different. And Miami, I think, is a pretty good team. So, in a divisional matchup, being able to survive that game, to me, is more impressive than anything. So, yeah, I'm gonna go with that. Then the Seahawks, who, man, what a weird team, right? Again, another team kind of similar to Arizona, just in that they're hard to figure out because their best games are so different than their worst games. They don't throw those, red zone interceptions. They probably win this game, but they threw those red zone interceptions, and they can't keep beating themselves. Because say what you want about the Rams, they didn't make those mistakes, right? So that's why the Rams won the game. I'm still going to put them in the same tier as the Rams, although I do think I like the Rams a little bit better right now. But either way, I still think there's a lot of talent on this roster. Again, get healthier at the receiver position. Jackson Smith and Jigba had a big day. He's been a real player for them. I still think this is a solid team. I'm not going to bump them down a tier. just because of that loss, but they do need to start playing better for sure. Patriots are a bad team. How do you not go for 2? They get this miracle play. How do you not go for 2? Right? You're a 2-6 team. Make something happen. They did not, and they lost the football game in overtime, which was unfortunate. Also, Drake May didn't love the, Kyle brought up. It's like, hey, his mistakes are misread, which I don't disagree, but still, I didn't love that interception in overtime. Because they had a real chance to still win that game or at least get a tie out of it. Weren't able to make it happen, but it's not his fault. A lot of tough talent around him. He's doing what he can, but yeah, I mean, Patriots aren't a good football team. I don't think I'd spend forever explaining that. That is my tier list for this week. Let me know in the comments below, which teams do you agree with, which teams do you disagree with. Always love hearing from you, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.